Welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! My name is Greg, and I represent the Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan.
And my name is Joshua. I'm the Yu-Gi newbie.
And this is a show where we're going to go through every episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! And review them from the fan and newbie perspective. Today we're discussing Episode 3, Journey to the Duelist Kingdom. Josh, why don't you kick us off with the first thing that happens in the episode?
So there's actually a lot of recap. I think this is the first episode where we have a full-on recap of episode 1 and 2, and then the theme song. So when we finally start off, Yugi's very dramatically at a fence with a great anime opening, lamenting about how his grandfather is gone and this great adventure he will probably be going on to try to save his grandpa. And then we cut away somewhat out of nowhere to Joey, who has just received a VCR tape, which at first I thought was the VCR tape that Pegasus had. And I was like, wait, he saw that tape. I don't understand why he doesn't see it. But it turns out it's from his sister, who we've never seen before, Serenity. So he's looking at Serenity, and she's has a somewhat foreboding message saying like, oh, I won't be able to ever see you again. And we're like, oh, that's confusing, which I don't want to get too far ahead, but a lot of this episode feels very like, we need to fit this scene in, and then we need to have this scene set up, and then this scene set up. So I thought it was very transitional. Did you have anything to say so far, Greg?
Yeah, there's a bit of that. What's interesting about this episode is there's just like tons of little details change from like the manga to this episode adaptation of it. And it's like what I've sort of noticed reading the manga again is that 2 chapters kind of equate to like 1 episode, I'd say, where this 1 episode is being stretched from 1 chapter of the manga. So in a way, this does feel padded, but I like a lot of the elements they're adding to this episode. And I think I prefer this episode over the manga chapter version of this part of the story. But there's like little weird details. Like I think that the first one I need to bring up is the grandpa is present the whole Duelist Kingdom arc with Yugi.
Really?
He's inside a video camera that they have.
What?
So they can talk to him.
Does he like give tips on like duels and stuff? He's like, Yugi, do this.
Not to my knowledge, his discussions with Yugi are so infrequent that like you forget about him all the time. And honestly, I prefer it this way where Grandpa's gone because it just feels better with the hero's journey archetype being separated from your teacher and stuff like that. I don't like it when the master is present. When he's present mentally, it's like, well, great. That's kind of what he's good for. He's helping the hero develop his brain and stuff like that.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it'd be like Yugi or Joey. Like they wouldn't be developing on their own. Like if they save the grandpa later in the show, then it's like, oh, Yugi, how much you've grown since like that time where I got captured. But I have to admit, when you brought that up with the video camera, I'm just envisioning Joey fighting on the island, like this Little Mac and Doc Lewis type situation, where the grandpa's like on the video camera next to Joey the whole time, and he's like, Joey, you have to use the kunai with chain, and he's like, oh yeah, great idea.
Yeah, as I go along with the manga, I'll take any notes, obviously, if that does happen, but to my memory, that does not happen.
No, I'm sure it won't, but I think that'd just be really hilarious.
I mean, he's there. It's like you're constantly wondering, well, why don't they look to him for advice? I mean, you could say it's considered helping, which is something that you shouldn't do in a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, stuff like that. But it's like they're always asking each other for advice and stuff like that in matches.
Yeah.
So.
The next thing that happens in the episode is, for some reason, Pegasus decided the best place to alert Yugi would be to slide a letter in the door of Grandpa's shop where anyone could take it.
That's where he lives.
That's where Yugi lives?
Yeah, it's a house in the back. So that is like actually their home.
But yeah, he finds this note and it has a bunch of cards in it, which tells Yugi that there is going to be a tournament, and the Duelist tournament, is that what it's called? Duelist Kingdom. And he is invited or required to go to save his grandpa. So he visits with his friends, Joey, Taya, and Tristan. And I thought this scene had some very stilted dialogue personally, especially one line. I
was laughing.
Oh, I was laughing too. When he's talking about it, it's like, oh, this situation's very unfortunate. And then there's a pause, and then Taya just says, this is bad. And then there's another pause, and then they just move on. It was so...
The one that got me is like the first scene in the episode was Yugi basically recapping like, Pegasus stole my grandfather's soul. And then it's just like 2 scenes later, you get Tristan saying the exact same thing. He's like, I still can't believe it. Pegasus used some weird magic to steal your grandpa's soul away, and now he's blackmailing you into playing in his tournament. It's like, what is the point of this?
Yeah.
The point of it is to hear Tristan's voice actor try to deliver those lines convincingly.
Yeah, Tristan's voice actor's he's an interesting guy so far.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make fun of him. I'm just saying, like, it's such a bad line already. But yes, this was pretty funny.
If I'm being honest, the next scene's even worse in my opinion.
Oh, I kind of like this scene.
I don't know. Yugi and Joey are having fun together, talking about how much friends they are.
How much friends they are.
That's how they talk. They're just like, I'm so glad we are the best friends, Joey. And he's like, yes, best friend you are. It's just like, why? Who wrote this?
You all right, Josh? Are you already ready to jump ship?
This was, if you can't tell, my least favorite episode so far. But
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm enjoying the show so far. I just think this episode did a very poor job of fitting together these scenes.
Okay. I mean, I'm sort of with you on the choppiness, but I think this is an improvement over last episode, to be honest, just because
Interesting.
I really thought the second half of the last episode really tanked. So,
Okay, I was more okay with it. Did you want to show your interpretation on Joey's backstory with meeting
oh God,
Christian?
I might need to watch the scene again, honestly.
All right, I mean, I can go
I mean,
over it.
it. God, I'm not trying to say this explains that it's good or anything. It's very straight out of the manga. This is basically how they meet: is that Joey and Tristan are picking on Yugi regularly, and then this bully that picks on them in the flashback is like, I guess it's blackmail. Like the way he approaches Yugi and says, like, "Hey, I can see those kids are picking on you. Don't worry, I'll take care of them." And Yugi's like, "No, I'm good. I don't need your help." And then he beats them like
Mhm.
it's like to an unconscious state. And then the manga version of Joey's like, Yugi, you did this. Of course, you little snake.
What?
And then because he sees Yugi show up, and then the bully is like, "That's right, Yugi told me to do this," even though he's making all this up. And then Yugi
Uh,
stands up for them and stuff and tries to get him to stop, but he just gets beat up too. And then Joey goes to fish out the Millennium Puzzle piece that he talked about throwing away previously, and then gives it to
yeah.
Yugi, and then they kind of become friends after that. Maybe it's just I'm too sentimental for this series, but I think this kind of silly sentimentality kind of works for me. The way they talk about it when you see the flashback of like Joey apologizing. Now that you're challenging me, I'm not sure I can really defend it, but I'm just saying it didn't bother me as much as the exposition dump in the last scene.
That's fair. It did feel like it was like, oh, this was what happened in the manga, so we really just need to push it as fast as possible to the audience so we can move on to Duelist Island.
As fast as possible is key there, but it is necessary to tell us what kind of friends Yugi and Joey are, that they are kind of opposites and they've kind of bonded over that, even though at first it put them at odds with each other. Josh, you're right. It is rushing through it. I don't know if this series is ever going to rise above that issue. So I think I'm finding I do like the Yugi Joey relationship coming back to this show. I've always thought it was kind of lame, but like this time I'm actually getting more into it. So I think I'm just a little more forgiving about it.
Yeah, I like the relationship, yeah. So the big part of the episode takes place on the ship going to Duelist Island, and so Yugi's all ready to go, and then we find out that when he's in line that Joey gets caught by the people because he was trying to smuggle on the ship, which apparently Yugi didn't know about. Joey didn't tell him or anything.
So this is a big change. Basically, in the manga, the four friends just kind of all come together and they're just all let on the boat. No problem, no
Really?
questions. No one minds that three extra people are coming that aren't in the tournament. And it does point out that like Yugi shares a star chip with Joey so he can be a tournament competitor. Because what happens is Joey gets the videotape in the mail and he doesn't know who it's from yet. He goes over to Yugi's house because very specifically he does not have an 8mm player. I love that little detail. Really showing Takahashi is a nerd, which is wonderful. And then they all watch it together, so they all kind of figure out about Joey's sister's eye problem at the same time.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that it's left a bit of a mystery. It's a little bit more relatable to me to how like I understand kids and stuff like that, of like wanting to sort of keep that a secret. But then it's also nice to see him open up pretty quickly to like sharing that information. It's just in terms of like doling out information. I like how this is all being paced out and stuff like that. It's like Joey has his own motivation and doesn't reveal it to the end of the episode to the other characters. I think that's a good bonding moment.
Yeah, me too.
But showing how these characters too are willing to sneak onto a ship to be with their friend and to support their friend, I think also makes their friendship stronger, as opposed to just no conflict of them showing up to the ship and yeah, everybody on board. It's fine.
Yep.
So I think that's all working pretty well. This is partly why I like this episode so much. I feel like it supports its themes throughout the entire episode, which I think the previous episode kind of failed with.
Yeah, I agree. I think for sure past that kind of expositional start at the start of the episode, I think this works a lot better because it feels a lot more cohesive.
Mhm.
But there are just a lot of kind of random things that feel thrown in there, like, oh, we need to set this up, so let's throw in this part into this episode. You know, it feels kind of like an episode where they're just throwing all of their bits so that in like the future episodes we can really focus on some things and have payoffs from this episode.
It's more setup, and I think with film, especially in film series, I really can get really picky about how well that's done, or even just it being done at all. I typically get angry when a film sets something up in one film and then pays it off, a next film, or God forbid, several films down the line. That always kind of frustrates me. But with a TV show, it is the medium. Like the point is that you're getting bite-sized pieces of the story. So are you just saying that it's not making a compelling enough episode on its own? It's too much setup and not enough its own thing.
Yeah, it didn't feel like an episode. It felt like, oh, this episode has like bits and pieces that are going to be continuously referenced down the line. Like maybe like in 7 episodes, they'll reference this character that we set up in this episode, but we just had to introduce them.
I'll argue that this episode just solidifies the friendships for me of all these characters, which, again, going down the line, I think I'm going to criticize realize a lot of the way friendship is portrayed in this show, but for this episode, I think basically just this is about the start of the episode, the characters are saying, "Man, I wish we could help you, Yugi, on your adventure." And then by the end of the episode, they've all taken risks and made sacrifices to be able to come support him on his adventure. So I'm gonna side with the episode. I think that's what it's about.
Yeah, that's fair. Anyways, we get introduced to a character. I'm interested in what you have to say about. So Joey gets on the ship because, as you mentioned, Yugi gives him one of his stars, so they're both at a disadvantage. And I believe if they lose a match, both of them are out immediately. So definitely like a bit higher stakes. But Joey gets to compete in the tournament, and then we see Tristan and Taya sneak on board as well, as you mentioned. And then we get introduced to Mai.
I don't want to say too much just because I want you to kind of watch it as it plays out. But I guess what is your reaction initially?
I'm fine with her. I just thought the writing with Joey and Yugi was very silly when they first meet her.
I feel like this portrayal kind of comes right on the cusp of 4Kids like deciding, no, we are not going to portray anything sexual in our shows. Like I'm saying,
Yeah.
at this point, they're kind of like, yeah, we could still kind of show like sexual attraction. We're not going to do it well, but we can kind of do that later on in the series. They're just going to cut anything that implies sexual attraction.
Yep, that's how it feels.
More later on in like the 4Kids canon of anime dubs and stuff like that, more than just this show. And there's probably instances of it getting cut down in this show. And I mean, I think they're cutting stuff down anyways already, but just like they're allowing a little bit of male gaze and like sexual desire into this.
For sure. It's very explicit. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's not like bad explicit, but
Yeah, they're trying hard not to make it too creepy, but the problem is that it's a perverted Japanese cartoon, and like the actual source material probably just did play it up way more, and they're just kind of awkwardly like, okay, this still needs to be for little kids. Let's figure this out.
yeah. Mai shows up, and the quote that had me, she was like, "You're either a champ or a chump. I'm gonna crush you all in the tournament." And then Joey says, "Please crush me." And she's just like, "Whatever, like it's fine."
Again, simplistic for kids. Meeting all these duels kind of set up that everybody is just sort of out for themselves, except for Yugi and his group of friends. And that sort of just like punctuates that, hey, these guys fight for friendship and they fight for the ones they love as opposed to just fighting for their own greedy desires and stuff like that. So, I
Yeah.
think that's all being set up decently. We should talk about Weevil a little bit. I mean, he does a pretty infamous thing, another infamous meme moment.
Yeah, one of the things I remembered from my previous watching of the show. So yeah, Weevil's there. We see Rex Raptor as well. They show up very overconfident. There's a whole side thing with Rex Raptor, but he gives Yugi some information, which I thought was interesting, that not everyone knew about, which wasn't honestly like very helpful, but he was just like, oh, this isn't normal. There's going to be extra things happening that you'll have to be aware of. I don't know why maybe he's trying to do it to gain Yugi's trust somewhat for later, but
I'm always confused by this moment, but I think that's all it's supposed to be. And I think it feels pretty obvious now to me that all he's doing is just trying to gain Yugi's trust so he can get him to give him his cards and stuff like that.
yeah.
So I think that works. That makes sense to me. I don't know why it took me 12 years to figure that out, but
Yeah, something I do find funny about this episode, there's such eccentric anime looking characters like Joey, Yugi, Weevil, Rex Raptor, Mai. They're all like so aggressive looking, and then all of the background characters are the most boring looking people in the world.
It's funny that you're bringing that up. I thought of that specifically with the shot where Yugi's looking up at the announcer on the boat and stuff like that.
Me
Like,
too.
I guess the problem is they don't even really look like they belong in the same universe.
Yeah.
I completely understand the method and animation reason behind why you do that. You do that so your main character stands out. So you're not just looking at like a way too busy collage of character designs and your eyes don't know where to focus. But yeah, I agree. Like looking at these kids, I'm like, why do these kids look all normal and then all of our main characters just look so over the top? But I guess it just could be that. It's just that we want our main characters, the ones that we focus on in the show, to stand out. But something about them doesn't even look like they match and like that they all belong in the same universe. So I kind of agree with that. It's bizarre.
I totally agree. Like that's probably why they did it, but I think they could have done a better job of still making background characters feel like they fit in the universe. Because it's like these look like little kids who this is like a huge tournament. This should be gathering like a lot of attention from the top players, not these people who seem like casual guys going to play in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Starting the show again, though, I think most of the players are kids, though. Maya's the only adult player we see so far, right? Weevil and Rex are definitely, teenagers. And I mean, they're the same age as basically Yugi, Joey, and all his friends. Just for some reason, they're really short also.
Yeah, that's fair, I guess.
I guess the shorter you are, the better you are at the game. I guess that's the logic.
It's not too horrible, except for when Yugi, like one of the most like bombastic looking character designs when he's looking up, and then there's just like all these stupid looking people next to him. Really just highlighted there. Anyways, let's get into this Rex Raptor business.
One thing about Mai's introduction, though, where she points out that Joey's clothes are like he's fashion challenged or whatever she says. But I'm like, Yugi's just wearing his school uniform.
But it works though, Greg.
What do you like?
The way
Just
he is.
fashionably, it works. All right.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like Yugi does put a bit more attention into his look if you look at his hair. I
I
think
mean,
it's
sure.
fair.
You think he does that by choice, Josh?
True. I mean, yeah, no, it's kinda silly that Yugi's wearing probably what's a somewhat traditional school uniform, and she doesn't call him out for it, so that's kinda
Can
silly.
I talk about Mai and Rex's
Oh,
interactions?
please. Please.
I think I'm assuming that's where you were going. Basically, Mai is the only adult woman on board, I believe, is like saying, "You can't put me in the common room with all the little kids," because I mean, it's a little creepy, but it would be a little creepy. I sort of agree. Even more creepy is Rex invites her to join her in his room because he's got his own suite because he was a finalist of the last regional tournament. So, and then they find themselves competing for basically the room. But I mean, the deal is that Mai says, hey, if you win, I'll give you a kiss, one kiss, as opposed to in the manga where she says, "I'll do anything you want for the whole night." Anyways,
That makes more sense. I don't know, it's like if you get just, like,
I
8
know,
kids,
but
like,
they
that's
can't
not that
say that in a
exciting.
four kids dub is the thing.
I
Like
know,
the
I
kiss is
know.
the furthest that they can go with it. Like
And I
so,
mean
I'm sure somebody was advocating, "I'll hold your hand." If you win, I'll hold your hand.
they could've maybe gone with, like, "I'll pretend I'm your girlfriend for a day," or something.
That might have been a safe alternative, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's not offensive, and it makes more
I
sense.
get it. We want to keep this G-rated. It's fine. That's not even really what's bothering me. What's bothering me is to this day, so I figured out the Weevil thing finally. Like, why is he being friendly to Yugi? But I do not understand still what this duel is that they're doing.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Both in the manga and in the anime, I just don't know what they're doing. Like, it seems like they're literally just playing guess the top deck.
I guess, I mean
Because like Rex is acting like, you can't beat me. I'm a regional champion. Like he even says we're playing with your deck, and then she just starts drawing cards and guessing them. I'm not questioning how she's able to do that. I'm just questioning what are they playing. I don't know what's going on.
I assumed that, like, she was using her deck and then, like, showing him so she has this special ability where she can essentially choose whatever card she wants from her deck at any time, and I assumed that she was, like, showing that off and it was like, "Uh-oh, like, I'm not gonna win this duel," and there was a duel that happened off screen.
Exactly. We don't see a frame of them playing the duel. Did something PG-13 happen in the Japanese version that they couldn't air? I'm not joking. Like what? But you know what? Even when I read the manga, there's no other better explanation. I don't know what they're doing, and I don't know why Rex would agree to play guess the top deck card. I mean, you could just say it's his ego, but he's acting like, I'm a great duelist. I guess you won't be able to predict the top cards of your own deck. I get
Yeah.
it. Like, who makes that gamble?
Ah,
I guess if you're a horny 15-year-old, you'll make any stupid decision. So whatever. It's not quite an Yu-Gi-Oh moment, which are moments that I just think are sort of irredeemable moments that do hurt the show overall. That's not quite that. It's more just a confusion of like I don't know what's going on.
yeah, it's just another disjointed somewhat aspect of the
And
episode.
other versions of this episode have not helped. The manga doesn't give me an answer, and the uncut version, I believe, didn't give me an answer. So
I think, other than that, it still works because, like I was talking about earlier, where, like, I feel like this episode is set up, like, it's obviously setting up Mai's character, like, Yugi's gonna fight Mai at some point, and she's gonna use the thing where she can see the top card and play whatever she wants, like, we're setting things up, and that's fine.
let's talk about in another few hours, the sun will rise.
Yeah,
Did you like that part?
that Tristan's just messing with Taya.
This is another censorship.
Oh.
So in the uncut version, this is kind of how I know this, and I'm assuming also in the Japanese version because this scene is not in the manga. Taya just has to go to the bathroom. Tristan says, "You could go overboard, or you could go in the corner right there," and then she gets mad, of course, at that. Are we just not allowed to say women need to pee in kids' cartoons? I mean, really, like
I guess. I mean, yeah, that's pretty dumb.
I need to be in the writers' room when they come up with things like, okay, we can't have a girl pee, so how about she's cold, and then Tristan says, in another few hours, the sun will rise. Like you have to be a lunatic to come up with lines like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love it.
I mean, he's supposed to be sarcastic or something, it just doesn't work.
It's not even like it really stands out to me as something like weird. It's just now that I know what the original line was, it's just infinitely funnier.
Oh, for sure, yeah, yeah.
In the Little Kuribo Yu-Gi-Oh! Bridge, the joke is, I have to use the bathroom, but the lady who dubs me won't admit it. Before we get into the big thing, let's just address Joey's new cards.
Oh,
Salamandra, a
yeah.
kunai with chain, baby dragon, and shield and sword. Great.
I mean, I don't know what the cards do.
Yeah.
but it is an extension of what happened previous episode where Joey's clearly like trying to step up, be good. He has gotten some more magic cards and such to buff up his deck. So Yugi's proud of him. He says, "Yay, you're doing stuff." And there's also another character moment when we, I think, first see Weevil and Rex Raptor, where Rex Raptor's kind of in the same mindset Joey was with the monsters, where he's like, "Yeah, my monsters will destroy anything that comes in my way." And then Joey's like, "Hey, no, you gotta combine it with the spell cards to be as powerful as possible." And it's like, wow, Joey's already growing.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
it is a good moment. It's kind of embarrassing because it's like someone bragging about something they just learned. But yeah, I don't think it works for sure in the
Yeah.
context of the scene in the show. You just pointed out it accomplishes showing that Joey is broadening his deck's horizon, stuff like that, by adding magic cards and stuff. But it's also showing like the aspect of trading cards, which I appreciate because that's a big part of any trading card game. Hence the name.
Yeah.
And then Yugi gives him the Time Wizard.
Which makes him feel bad because he has self-confidence issues.
Doesn't he say like, "Man, you're always helping me out"?
Yeah, he's like, "Man, he's already helping you out. I wish I could do something to pay you back."
You want to describe the big scene?
Yeah, so this is the one big scene I had remembered going into the show, which I also remember that they are going to recap this scene. It feels like every single episode for like the next 10
At first, it's to
episodes.
show why we need to get revenge on Weevil, and then it's to show how much of a friend Joey is. Yeah, it's just gonna go on and on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens is Weevil approaches Joey and Yugi and he says, "Oh, I'm such a big fan. I like this card game and I really want to see your Exodia cards. They're so rare." And so Yugi, because Weevil gained his trust, Yugi shows him the cards and then he's like, "I spent all this time trying to figure out how to beat it, but now I have the solution. I'm gonna throw it overboard." And then they all fall and Joey's like, "Oh crap." And so Joey jumps a very long distance off overboard to try to get the cards. I feel like he would sustain some sort of brain damage or bodily injury.
Everyone's made of rubber in this show. No one ever gets hurt.
But yeah, he jumps down. He maybe recovers one or two of the cards, but then almost gets swept up in the current. And Tristan and Taya come out of hiding and make a ladder. So now Joey is back up and happy.
I wanted to address the choice that Yugi's able to jump into the ocean from a boat that he's on to save his friend. I don't even know if this is a problem, but I thought it was worth bringing up. I think one of my problems with Yugi is that he's supposed to be like the frail, insecure nerd protagonist. Then he has like the spirit inside of him that helps him become stronger. But like the fact that he can stand up to a bully and jumps into the ocean to save his friend, it doesn't really make him look that weak. I don't even know if that's a problem because obviously that could get annoying after a while, just seeing a character that's so cowardice. But just like it starts to make me question like what are we supposed to root for Yugi since he's always doing everything perfect? It's almost like he's a Mary Sue.
I'm fine with Yugi as a character so far because for me the show isn't about like extremely complex characters or anything. Like we set up a very like not necessarily trivial, but just like, oh, he's got to get his grandfather back, so now that's an excuse to do all these fun duels and have a good time. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of this episode because it doesn't really have that like cheesy kind of fun stupid battle stuff. It's just a lot of setup for stuff like, oh, we have to have Weevil destroy the Exodia, we have to set up Joey and Yugi's relationship, we have to do this and this, and it feels like a checklist to me, you know. Whereas later episodes, I know we'll get into stuff where it's like, oh, like here, let's really dig into this battle that's happening and get into like Yugi's insecurities or figure stuff out about it. I don't know if it even goes that deep, but I feel like this episode isn't trying to have fun. It's just trying to get information across, which is why like as a standalone, it really just didn't do it hugely for me.
I just feel like it's necessary to talk about just because this is a show that is about a theoretically weak character being helped by an alter ego to make him stronger and stuff like that. And I just find it weird that Yugi rarely backs down from a challenge. He's rarely cowardice. Makes you wonder why he even needs the Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Later on in the series, sure, he wants to help him as like a friend, but why is he even necessary since Yugi seems to be able to handle such extreme things? I'm sorry, any duel that the Pharaoh has to face is like pales like that's not true. There's some pretty intense stuff that happens, but just like playing a card game in general pales in comparison to being able to jump into the ocean
Yeah.
in the middle of the ocean. Like, I don't know. It just seems bizarre to me
Yeah.
sometimes.
No, it is.
It wasn't like Yugi was like, "Oh God, I don't know if I can, have the courage to do this." And then the Pharaoh takes over, and then he jumps in after Joey because now that the Pharaoh's in control, he's like brave enough to do it. It just seems a little strange to me that we set up this protagonist as having like an alter ego that's supposed to make him stronger, but yet he's brave enough to like dive into the ocean to save his friend. So I don't know what Yugi really needs to overcome as a person so far, I guess is my question. And again, If
Yeah,
this was
yeah.
just outright power fantasy, just like you just want to be Yugi and that's the whole point of watching the show, that's fine. But they're very specifically setting up a character that has an alter ego to make him stronger. And I find that very strange. Again, I don't know if I call this a Yu-Gi-Oh moment either. I don't think for me this episode has any Yu-Gi-Oh moments, but it definitely just has some of that weird Takahashi, like, why does he make the decisions he makes for his narrative? It's very bizarre to me.
Yeah, no, it's strange because I agree. Like when you have like this kind of alter ego, it totally makes sense to have Yugi starting off as this weaker person who really needs the help of the Pharaoh to help him feel stronger. And like you could have a moment where he's like, "Oh, like I'm useless. I would be nothing without the Millennium Puzzle and without the Pharaoh." And then like maybe the Pharaoh goes away for a bit, and then Yugi has to stand up and learns that he is like powerful or strong enough to handle it. So it's a very strange setup to not have that setup, I guess. Yeah, I'm not saying this should excuse it, but the reasons I have enjoyed this show so far is it's very like cheesy and fun and kind of silly. It's less for like story consistencies, but I know that you definitely like to look for that.
Yeah, I'm here to celebrate the show's aesthetic qualities and how the show is exciting to watch. But I do want to point out, like, there are a lot of weird storytelling decisions in this show.
For sure.
And they're all coming from things that I don't think are lazy. I want to be very specific about that. I don't think this show is ever being lazy or like uninspired. It's just making very weird decisions that I want to point out because they're interesting to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
All right, I think that's it for this episode. I mean, Josh, are you going to recommend the episode overall just because it's necessary, or are you not going to recommend it because it just wasn't satisfying enough?
It is necessary. I will admit it was my least favorite so far. I think it was the least enjoyable, but it's very important, it seems, for the story overall. And it definitely has moments that I think are entertaining. It definitely was like an entertaining episode still. It just felt a little disjointed to me. But if you're watching Yu Gi Oh!, for sure watch this episode as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those episodes where, regardless of how good or bad it was, you have to watch it just to sort of get the context and setting up all of our rival characters that we're going to meet on Duelist Kingdom and stuff, and that Yugi and Joey are going to have to face. Overall, though, I'd say I'm almost on a little bit of the opposite side. I definitely don't think this is as good as the first episode. I definitely think this is an improvement over the second one, just because I think it picks themes at the beginning about friendships and loyalty and stuff like that. And by the end of it, I think everybody gets a little bit of something to do. Everybody gets to sacrifice something or prove their loyalty to Yugi as his friend and stuff like that by the end of the episode. So I think this episode works overall. I agree with you. It's a bit choppy because it's just trying to shove in so much setup for the rest of the season. But I do think overall this is an episode that's working and doesn't have any big Yu-Gi-Oh moments like the last episode does for me.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think so.
Well, I'm Greg the fan.
I'm Joshua the Yugi newbie.
And we hope to see you next time for Yu-Gi-Oh! Episode 4, Into the Hornet's Nest. See you next time.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a manga series originally created by manga artist and author Kazuki Takahashi, and originally published in Shonen Jump magazine. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime was created by Galb Company Limited, and the English dub primarily discussed in this podcast was produced by 4Kids Entertainment. This podcast is a non-profit media content, and created for entertainment purposes only. All rights of content discussed and music used go to their respective owners. We hope you'll join us next time.